Splatoon 3 is possibly the single most anticipated sequel to Splatoon 2, announced over 2 years ago at this point and finally releasing in September of 2022. I have poured my soul into this game, I don't sleep anymore. Splatoon 3 was announced in February 2021, with the Splatoon community begging for an unlikely announcement for a full Splatoon sequel on the same system as the last game. Everyone thought they were crazy. But the Splatoon community absolutely blew up with new life again once it was announced, and everyone else, you know, the people who aren't into the game that much, they thought, why does this exist? And yeah, that's a perfectly valid question. Why does this game exist? After all, we spent years building up Splatoon 2 to a huge game, but there are quite a few reasons I personally think we needed a Splatoon 3, yes, even on the same console as the last. I'm addicted to Splatoon, always have been. Sometimes you get the odd off period, but I always end up coming back to pick up a new weapon or motivated to try and grind to the top of X rank. Just something about it keeps me coming back. I've got 2 whole videos talking about it. However, at the time of Splatoon 3's release, Splatoon 2 was over 5 years old, and we've had no substantial updates to the game since early 2019. And for any online game, that usually means the game is left in whatever the last meta was. Splatoon 1 wasn't too bad in its final state. The frustrating part of that game comes from the fact that about 5 billion things are incredibly unbalanced, resulting in a super chaotic experience playing that game now. Damage up, E-leaders, carbon rollers, dynamos, lunars, bubblers, and krakens providing complete immunity. There is so much stupid stuff in that game that honestly, that's just how the game is. But what I wish Splatoon 2 took from that is not just having 1 or 2 singular things be completely overtuned. Like in 2, Stingray holding objectives and missile spam being completely viable strategies made me so frustrated playing that game. It was not fun, and the Kenza 52 gal was just plain better than everything else. So look, if we weren't going to fix that, I think we needed a new game altogether, and abandoning some rocky game design choices from the series past was more than welcome for many. I was ready for some new specials in particular. Special design in these games, I've come to realize, really defines the experience of each entry in the series. And that's simply because these weapons are the most powerful and can have a huge impact in scoring that team wipe you need to push the objective, especially when making a coordinated push alongside your team. In Splatoon 1, I liked the specials in that game, although there was some tuning needed for the immediate invulnerability with Kraken and Bubbler, and a bit of jank with the Inkzuka, but overall it wasn't too bad. But they decided to change it for 2, understandably so. Maybe they could make them a bit less ridiculous, start over, and create some specials that would define Splatoon 2. But in my opinion, they made them a lot less interesting, fun, or well designed. Not only that, but Stingray and missiles were unbearable to play around, as I mentioned earlier. So getting a new set of them was exciting, especially since we were teased with a crab and the return of the Inkzuka, now called the Trizuka, where we're getting enhancements of those Splatoon 1 classics that were a lot of fun, but kind of janky and overtuned. So now that it's been released for a few months now, did Splatoon 3 shake up the series in a good way going forward? What was it going to do to make it a fresh, new experience and not waste the opportunities an entirely new release brings? Well, we sure as hell had no idea until a year and a half later, with the Splatoon 3 Direct in August 2022, announcing all the details and a Splatfest world premiere just like Splatoon 2, where we got to play the game for 8 hours on the 28th of August in Australia, and experience all the new things it had to offer, including the Splatfest exclusive new mode, Tricolor Turf War, with 3 teams now. So this was our first look at the game, and from my experience, I had a blast, but a bit of a hard time adjusting to all the new stuff, where I saw people complaining that the 2 new weapon classes, the Stringer and Splatana, were underwhelming and underpowered, the new movement options weren't all that game changing, and Tricolor Turf War was unbalanced. But now that we've had a bit of time, I'd like to dive into whether these new changes warranted an entirely new entry, and take a look both casually and competitively at Splatoon 3. So obviously one of the most important things to offer is the gameplay itself, but before all that, they revamped the entire lobby to this massive bustling city centre of chaos in Splatsville at the heart of the new setting of the Splatlands. It's huge and lovely to run around in. Stupid detail for example, but I love the hat shop being up this staircase above ammo nights like this. You don't have to run up there, but you can if you want to. And while you wait for matches, you get access to this training room with test dummies moving and stationary and a robot that can shoot at you and throw bombs. And you've got the ticket exchange staff in there, and you can look at lockers and chill at this lower couch and higher up cafe bar thing. It's a treat with hourly exclusive music with a bunch of original tracks and albums of old classic Splatoon songs from 1 and 2. Listen to this shit. The entire overall aesthetic and theming of this game is amazing. It truly feels like you're a sports superstar waiting to shoot through that kettle teleporter thingo straight into your match, training before you go. And the news is skippable now. I'll tell you, all stuff like this sets a precedent for this game. All these tiny little touch-ups are just a godsend, and that's kind of like what this whole game is. A polished and fully packaged, big budget Splatoon game right at launch. They've introduced a catalog that you fill out with all sorts of cosmetics that change with every season. Yeah, Splatoon has seasons now too, and they correspond to actual real life seasons as well. So now there's no random waiting and we'll know exactly when they'll be. I was skeptical of the approach with catalogs at first, however, because you obviously miss out on the exclusive items if you don't fill out a catalog in time. But Splatoon usually has a way of making that stuff come back around later, so I'm hoping it'll just be fine. But it feels great to just be earning things all the time. With all these level ups, it's so much fun to grind in this game because it all works towards so many different ways to express yourself. With splash tags and badges and little titles to describe yourself or say something stupid, lockers and items for it, a whole shop to spend all your money in to decorate it, and the ability to swap out main abilities on any piece of gear, it has been so great creating a bunch of different sets of gear, where before in Splatoon 1 and 2, I had only one set of gear, especially with the freshest fits too to put them all in, but there should be more of these, please. It's so fun to grind in this game because it doesn't even feel like that, it just feels like there is so much content at launch. But although at launch there is one kit for every main weapon, which is an amazing first for a Splatoon launch content wise, I wish I didn't have to wait for all my old gear to return. White Anchor T, where are you? But at least this time, as I said, the main weapons aren't being artificially locked out for post-launch updates this time, it's just cosmetics like gear. So to start with said main weapons, there are 2 more entire new weapon classes to add to the mix, which is better than 2 had at launch, and I personally believe they are super well designed. To start with, there are the Stringers, revealed back at the very first trailer of the game. These would seem kind of similar to a regular charger at first, charging up a shot to one-shot players, but the charge increases range and focuses the spread of the 3 arrows these things shoot, as when all 3 line up, that's when the one shot comes in. And the fact that these shots aren't hit scan and don't show an aiming laser to warn opponents mean these things have a completely different playstyle. They also paint decently to very well, and the Tri-Stringer specifically drops these little bomb arrow things that blow up a small amount on detonation, great for pressure. The Stringers may not exactly be thriving right now, but I personally think there's a lot of fun to be found in these things, and that they're a welcome addition to the game. And then there are the Splatanas. I love these things, but I'll admit at first they puzzled me, and the Wiper specifically was in a bit of a weak state initially, lacking any painting ability. They're incredibly versatile weapons with multiple means to splitting enemies, usually sending a beam of ink piercing through the battlefield. They're kind of so versatile that it took a while for them to find their place in the game, but a playstyle that takes advantage of all their capabilities, mixing all kinds of strategies with an extremely high skill ceiling for the weapons, makes these things a force to be reckoned with. Able to charge a more powerful and further travelling shot, swing rapidly from a distance, or twist around for a lethal one-shot lunge. I knew from day one the Wiper was something I wanted to main, but damn, this thing really did have a steep learning curve, and its special weapon didn't work. What the f***? But they fixed the bugs for Ultra Stamp, still not the best, but better, and gave a huge painting buff to the Wiper itself, making it the ultimate I'm inside your walls weapon, where I run quick respawn, swim speed, ninja squid, and stealth jump with a tiny bit of quick super jump to harass anyone and then run away like a little goblin into their base. Absolute hidden top tier weapon, I'm in love with this thing, and I kinda hope people don't realize how good it is because then they'll call for nerfs. As for the subs, they've added one, the Angle Shooter. I thought it would replace Point Sensor and be better, but it did neither of those things. It's quite weak and kind of useless a lot of the time though. It sent out a tracking tripwire of sorts where if you cross it you get tracked, or take 35 damage with a direct hit scan landing on you. It's a pretty cool idea, just very underpowered right now. Now the specials. These are the core of what creates the entire feel of a Splatoon game, and they're fantastic. I'm not going to go through all of them, but Zipcaster is probably my favourite, zooming around people and wreaking havoc, although the weapons they put it on are certainly some strange choices. I think Octobrush probably got it the best. But there are a few reimagined Splatoon 1 specials. The Trizooka feels way more fun to use than the Inkzooka, so getting it on Carbon Roller Deco with a burst bomb was a dream come true for me. I loved it in Splatoon 1, and now the special feels even better. It doesn't last too long, and I feel like you can aim it a lot better, not feeling too much pressure to get out as many shots as possible like before, instead able to sit back and take some time to aim. That extra range on Carbon is so good. This is just such a fun weapon. I feel like overall I've bonded so much better with the weapons in this game. Splatana Wiper, Carbon Deco, Octo Brush, 52 Gal, T-Tech Splatter Shot, and these weapons all exist so early on as well, with loads more to come. It already feels better than Splatoon 2. I never felt like this for any of the specials, or the kits never really spoke to me as well as here. These amazing, fun new specials with 5 returning from Splatoon 2, arguably 4 of the best picks they could have had. I could have done without 10 missiles on Reflux ruling early meta for a while though. Then added to the 10 original and revamped Splatoon 1 specials of this game to make 15, which is 4 more than Splatoon 2 ended with, and 8 more than 1. It can feel a bit chaotic, but almost all specials here are well designed and fun to have. Just need to buff a few of them, namely Ultra Stamp, Reef Slider, and Tactical. We also got some small modifications to the modes, namely Rainmaker and Clam Blitz, with Rainmaker adding checkpoints to fix its biggest flaw where you could run the entire objective down after getting a team wipe. Not fun. Now you can't just lose your lead if that happens again and the other team hasn't crossed the checkpoint that you already have, so long as you're consistently performing better and winning more fights. Clam Blitz also has clams spawning in groups of 3 now instead of 4 to better suit the change of 8 clams to form a power clam now instead of 10, presumably to get the objective going quicker. It doesn't work. I've still had multiple overtimes at 100 score for both teams. Appreciated change anyway. Now this all being said, the early meta for Splatoon 3 has been interesting so far. We've had missile spam come and go, only for Crab Tank to take over, shutting down entire areas with a forceful spray and an arcing cannon-like shot, so you're not even safe behind cover, but only with Splash-o-Matic because it can put them out so often with its paint and its powerful burst bomb sub. This thing is currently a force to be reckoned with, and they aren't nerfing it for some reason, instead trying to buff other things like triple ink strike to deal with it. It's not that bad, just slightly too strong compared to literally everything else in the game, that I think maybe its fire rate or range could be toned down just a little. But as time goes on, let's hope we don't get too many weapons getting 10 missiles, especially something like a shooter, so there are no repeats of the Kenza Spider Shot outputting so many of them. We can only hope. They've only got 3 weapons with it so far, it's currently in a fairly bearable state, but that begs the question of why they brought it back in the first place. Please devs, I urge you to unleash the missiles sparingly. The maps, on the other hand, I feel, however, are one of the biggest leading causes to problems with Crab Tank and long range favoring in general. Splatoon 1 overall had pretty solid maps all round, all with a clear set idea with flank routes and plenty of cover to duck behind. Splatoon 2 had a mixture of problems with its maps, either being pretty boring with no set idea in mind other than theming, very open design with lacking cover options, and poor flank routes. Splatoon 3, I believe, also suffers equally with these exact same problems as 2. But also does bring on board some absolutely banger maps. It's a very tough situation to describe because they've added back Flounder Heights, but did away with an entire route out of spawn and blocked off parts at mid, but it still doesn't destroy the map at all since there are so many options on that map regardless. But Hammerhead Bridge and Mahi-Mahi Resort from Splatoon 1 have gotten complete, I want to say makeovers, but they're not at all. They removed everything out of mid in Hammerhead Bridge, so it's just an absolute bloodbath like Wahoo World. Not quite as bad, but it's impossible to break through. They also just got rid of options, places to perch or flank around. It's very upsetting. Sure, the graded bridge idea in the original Hammerhead was a little jarring being so big and such a crucial part to play around, and in my opinion made things very cluttered, but they didn't have to do away with it entirely, did they? It felt like this was the bridge in the map. A bridge on a bridge, it was cool, but now it's just sort of this lifeless map like Walleye Warehouse 2 and Mahi-Mahi Resort. What did they do to this map? This was one of my favorite maps in the entire franchise, and they ruined it. It retains the mid from the old one, and sort of the idea of these boxes over here, but fucking barely, if at all. And that's it! This map is insanely tiny now, missing its entire spawn region, and it's just like nothing to do in it besides just get to mid and then their base in 2 seconds flat. And how much confidence does it let on when their ranked modes change as drastically as they do? They become just either tower controls weird mid with a gap through all the fighting like this. What is this? And then the awful bump when the water level changes, and Rainmaker can be completed in 2 seconds. This isn't Mahi. Mahi had entries to mid from the spawn area from 2 entire full sides. It had high ground created by the changing water levels instead of only new land created, and so many ways to the enemy space that could also be easily guarded. I am devastated that they ruined these perfectly good maps. And on the other hand, Hagglefish Market is a pretty great new map. Then they have Mincemeat being horrible with long range able to completely lock down the entire map as a trade-off. They did pick some decent maps to return from Splatoon 2, and of course those are the ones that are completely unchanged, Wahoo World was one that actually needed it though. Overall, it feels like we're still struggling with similar issues to Splatoon 2. It's hard to say right now if it's better or worse due to recency bias, and finally having some new maps for the first time in years. Let's just hope they do some map renovations in the future, and maps added later on aren't so jarringly open and linear. Options in maps are so important because it provides so many different possibilities for situations that can play out in a match. Various situations where different weapons can each find spots on the map to thrive. But right now we've realized that picking E-Leader and Splash-o-Matic for its crab tanks has the power to guard any push and approach options thoroughly. All this to say, however, this isn't game ruining because, yeah, we still have some absolute banger maps in there where Splatoon 2 felt more average overall. Besides the maps being my biggest problem with the game, it's still a great game. There's rewards galore for playing, really clean new movement options, fantastic new weapons, especially the balanced but chaotic new specials. They've struck the perfect balance between Splatoon 1 being super new, fresh and creative, and Splatoon 2 actively trying to refine and balance and add more content overall. They've done a pretty great job here making the gameplay faster and more exciting than ever, and it's so good to have good music in a Splatoon game again to pump you right up with a solid and consistent theme of, well, chaos, going alongside the entire game's theme after Team Chaos won the final Splatfests of Splatoon 2. Lots of hard rock, even some jazz in there from Off the Hook, which by its very nature is very chaotic too. As for the other modes in the game, Salmon Run. Debuting in Splatoon 2, it returns again with 2 new maps at launch, the return of the spawning grounds, and later on Maruna's Bay. It received that absolute game changer of the egg thrower and some really well designed new bosses. I love the Big Shot. He's tough to deal with, but if you can clear him away, you get access to his cannon to fire eggs. There's the Salmon lid, able to take out other bosses under him if manipulated properly, and there's especially Koho-Zuna. This guy is such a bitch to defeat sometimes, needing an egg cannon to launch eggs collected from a regular boss Salmonids to defeat. And now there are 7 specials to be given out instead of only 4. And the mode is open all the time now. The movement options also now allow escape possibilities in really stressful situations, like so much easier now. And the maps, they're all pretty good. And the new ones, Sockeye Station and Gone Fish and Hydro Plant, they are amazing. Beautiful spots for high ground with lots of places to climb up walls, they're pretty fantastic. Sockeye in particular is so interesting because it's so rounded. I love it for that reason, I can't explain why, it's just something different and interesting. They've also added customization here too, bought by collecting fish scales from fighting a king salmonid. But why are gold scales so insanely rare? Surely your chance for that would go up if you defeat a king salmonid, right? But no, you just get more scales for beating him. But they've added even more with more Grizzco weapons like the Grizzco Splatana and the Grizzco Stringer. The Splatana is stupidly strong, able to pierce through even flyfish, I love it. Oh yeah, and I still hate flyfish. And the Glowflies mode now? It's so insanely hard, I don't know what they did compared to Splatoon 2. This randomly is the only event I have like a 10% clear rate in, it's so dumb. These guys feel faster, stronger, I don't know, something to make them more powerful. And there are 2 new night events added, but they're kind of on the easier side, maybe they should make them a bit harder. So Salmon Run overall didn't get that many changes, just lots of little upgrades and enhancements that make the experience endlessly more addicting than before. And to give a quick mention to Tableturf Battle, I myself haven't been able to get into it too much. It isn't exactly my thing, but I have had some fun with it. It's a pretty cool virtual card game concept where you play it out like a turf war, but with more patience and turn-based strategy. What's also nice is that the game throws these card packs at you constantly. The Shell-Out Machine, single player mode, and catalog. Probably more. It makes me feel like a kid getting them and getting the shiny ones. Now to come full circle all the way back to the start, how have the game's events been? Namely Splatfests and Big Run. First up, let me just say that Splatoon doing these makes it feel so much more like an in-world community with debates about the topics every Splatfest and the competitiveness between teams and a fun parade with loads of detail and decorations in the hub, new music just for Splatfests once again, and the rewards of the Super Sea Snails for upgrading and re-rolling gear. Alright, I should mention the new lovable idols, Deep Cut, parading around the square, each with their own Day 1 Splatfest theme you can hear as you near their parade floats. Each idol also leads a Splatfest team to correspond to all 3 of them now, meaning 3 teams, meaning that, at least theoretically, the issue of the teams being unevenly distributed isn't nearly as much as a problem as it was before, meaning that there should barely be any matches where you fight your own team, and I personally, through each and every Splatfest, have not had that issue. And following the idea of 3 teams now, the devs continued their crippling obsession with the number by introducing 3 times battles, worth 333 wins worth of clout towards your team's victory, in addition to keeping the increased frequency of the 10 times and 100 times battles from Splatoon 2's latest Splatfests. And I'll tell you, I never got a 100 times battle in Splatoon 2, but I've had multiple in Splatoon 3, in addition to plenty of 10 times battles to increase the chances of getting a 100 times battle with festival shells you earn from winning 10 times battles. But nothing will shake you more than rolling a 333 times battle triggered when someone on both teams manages to trigger a 100 times battle, which I managed to roll somehow during the favorite Pokemon starter type Splatfest for Team Fire, and we won! This battle was utterly terrifying, and all these battles can feel way more intense and make Turf War and Splatfest all around so much more enjoyable, throwing that competitive edge in there every so often, which I personally love. With this and the brand new Tricolor Turf War mode, I really couldn't care that ranked modes aren't available during the weekend, with Splatfest on average lasting a whole weekend now as opposed to them usually being a day in Splatoon 1 and 2. As for Tricolor Turf War, this mode has received a very interesting reception. I, for one, never expected this shit to be balanced. So to explain how it works, 2 separate teams of 2 spawn in the regular spawn areas and try to approach the team of 4 defending in the middle. Defending what exactly? The new Ultra Signals that the 2 attacking teams can attempt to steal, being quicker with each attempt until they get it and lock it down as a giant sprinkler for the map. And losing out on one of these can be quite devastating for the defenders. The mode essentially plays as the 2 attacking teams trying to team up against the defenders, earning clout for each other if either one wins. Slightly more for which specific attacking team won, but it's definitely in their best interest for the other to win instead of the defenders. But if the defenders win, they get a decent chunk more clout as a result, but obviously just straight up nothing if they lose. For some reason, people are upset that this asymmetrically designed mode isn't perfectly balanced, and I agree that the maps need to try a little harder than whatever this horrible crap on Undertow was, and I can't speak for Hammerhead as I only defended on it, but Sturgeon was actually pretty alright I found the second time it came around and was rearranged a bit. But yeah, of course this mode is unbalanced. At launch they thought it was enough of a problem to make Tricolor Turf War less common in Update 2.0, saying, "F it, we can't fix this right now," affecting the Pokemon Splatfest and giving out Tricolor Turf Wars way less frequently. Well, you might be thinking, how the hell does that even work when there's a whole extra option just to pick it? Well, you weren't guaranteed to get a Tricolor match if you selected that mode, not even close. You just get a regular Turf War most of the time. They mainly thought it was unbalanced because on day 2 of the Splatfest, the day when Tricolor Turf War became available, they would announce the current leader of the Splatfest and place that team only on the defending team, and the others as attackers, regardless of popularity. So if the maps are skewed favoring one side, then that side with the advantage is probably just going to win. This also didn't help the frequency of these battles, because if there were significantly less people on the Splatfest team that was the halftime leader, then attackers would rarely find enough defenders for the matches. So as of Update 2.0, they made it so that if your role in the Tricolor Turf War, chosen with an even 50-50 chance, corresponds to your position at the halftime results, defenders for first, attackers for second and third, you'll get a 1.5 times multiplier for games, so to serve as the comeback mechanic it was always intended to be, making still for a tighter competition, yet people still get to play the new mode and get guaranteed Tricolor battles when they select the mode option. To sum up my thoughts so far on Splatfest in Splatoon 3, Tricolor Turf War has been a mess so far, but I have had a lot of fun playing it, except when the maps have been particularly favouring one side. The update to Tricolor unfortunately means you can't play in groups of 4 anymore as the defenders, which sucks, but it's been one hell of a messy time to get to that point, and I think it's in a fairly okay state right now, and I'm also glad it's playable all the time. Unfortunately, that does mean that some matches will be ditto matches against your own team entirely, which is kind of annoying for me personally, because even though I do get to play Tricolor, it feels worthless playing them. Especially when before the update, when you didn't get a Tricolor Turf War, you would just do a regular Turf War match against a different team at least. And this also felt to some extent that it stopped Tricolor from getting stale, especially since Tricolor will only have one map available for the entire day. Although before it was way too rare, now it feels like it's too common and gets stale quickly playing on only one map the entire time, especially when having to waste what felt like half my matches in the Chocolate Splatfest playing against my own team, even though they weren't the most popular team. It feels like in theory, these recent changes they've made with any team being able to be attackers or defenders should mean that they can balance out the numbers so much better, just chucking the most popular team on the defense position because it needs 4 players instead of 2, but that's just my 2 cents. And so now to wrap things up with the brand new event introduced into the game, Big Run, where Salmonids take over a regular stage in the game in a big invasion. This event has quite a bit less to it than before, especially rewards. You can compete for rare statues by collecting the most gold eggs possible, and you get double the rewards of a regular Salmon run rotation. That aside, the news intro music being different is a lot of fun, and a new song for the mode also exists in regular gameplay. But as for the mode itself, yeah, I think it's a really cool and creative idea. Wahoo World was actually a pretty decent fit for Salmon Run, with different egg basket spots around the map. It was pretty exciting and very chaotic to play. And we did get random weapons for the rotation, which was nice, but I wish that included the possibility to get every Grizzco weapon instead of just the blaster. You know, blaster, charge, umbrella, slosher, string, splatana, alongside all the main weapons, just for as exciting and varied an experience as possible. It was still a cool event, I just wish there were like heaps of rewards to gain from playing it. It was just a tiny bit overwhelming, but I'm excited to see some other maps come around for it. Still an appreciated event, and I'm still excited to try and grind for the gold statue next time it comes around. Now to cap off the video, I thought I'd cover a final wish list of things I want for the next time I check in with the game when the updates are all finished. Just going through bullet point style in a rough order of how reasonable the requests are, just to make the ultimate Splatoon game. There's gotta be more maps than Splatoon 2, a nice 30 or 33 would be quite funny, but so long as there's more than Splatoon 2, it'll feel like the ultimate Splatoon game. The return of old maps that I personally like, please, and no more ruining them and destroying flank routes. In particular, I want back the Reef, Humpback, Manta Maria, Urchin Underpass, and Bluefin Depot. And I want Bluefin to stay true to its idea of the two segregated sections at mid. I loved it, at least in Turf War, maybe just for ranked. No maps returning for a third time that were in both Splatoon 1 and 2. Maybe I wouldn't mind a select few, but it's hard to say, so I think I'm just over them after 7 years. And while we're at it, bring back Ruins of Arc Polaris and maybe even just all the old Salmon Run maps and some new original ones too. 5 maps only for Salmon Run was a crime, so if they reuse their old ones and add more, we could have like 10. More King Salmonids, I reckon 3 different variations with different-ish styles of taking them down would be awesome. Why refer to it as specifically Kohozuno instead of just King Salmonid if more aren't planned to come? More rewards for Big Run, as I just mentioned this one before. And while we're talking about modes, hurry up and get League Battle in here. And add a new ranked mode as well. I know it's always a risk to create a new mode because we don't know if it will integrate properly into the maps, but the maps aren't that great right now anyway, so what does it matter? And one I think is a given, online Tableturf. I tend to play modes more if I know they're making a real person cry. And for the last given regarding modes, Tricolor Turf War needs to go to private battle once the final Splatfest happens. Speaking of, make the final Splatfest just as cool as 2. It's gonna be hard because they had every shifty station ever, and a whole new one that had the killer whale and giant bombs, but I know you guys can do it. And make sure I get to hear Splatoon 1's Ink Me Up, I'm still sad I missed it on day 1 last time. Let's also get some new music in the game. I love the 4 separate releases of new music styles in 2, but let's make sure they're also bangers as well. And specifically bring back High Tide Era, they only got 2 songs in Splat 1. Now I don't think it's too ridiculous to ask for at least 3 kits for each main weapon, at least all the ones that exist at launch. We got pretty damn close in 2, and it just adds variety to playstyles. It can be hard to balance sometimes, but again, they were so close before. That being said, do not put 10 missiles on a shooter, and stop shooter bias in general please. Stop increasing their special output, and nerf Splash! Please, get it off the throne. I expect it to be reduced to atoms by the time I talk about this again. While we're also talking balance changes, buff Brellas. They're so healthy for the game, as ProChara has made a whole video on, and buff Big Swig. Don't just give it missiles or something. And please, just apply missiles to weapons very sparingly. We are in danger of getting a missile spamming error. And fix the bloody Ultra Stamp. Stop letting me die from the front. There is a giant hammer there! Also never nerf the wiper, please. Thank you. Bring back all the old gear, or at least specifically the Cyan Dacronix and my beloved White Anchor Tee. Do not bring back damage up or main power up. Do not! And just straight up remove 10 missiles from the game, I decided. F*** 'em. Can we also get an official release of the soundtrack too? I'm sick of calling the song Rocket 4. Now for some outlandish ones. Can we fix the connection issues please? Do not boot everyone from matchmaking if someone it started to pair you up with decides to quit. And let us cancel matchmaking to avoid this issue. Also, let us change weapons between matches in Ranked Open, and also League when that arrives. You fixed the issues with playing in a party with friends in Turf War, but now have ruined it in Ranked for some reason. Can we also fix the shitty maps, namely Scourge, Hammerhead, Mahi, Undertow, Wahoo, and Mincemeat? All these maps have the issues of no flank routes, please add some. And to specifically call out Mahi, just put it back how it was, thank you. For Tricolor Turf War, stop giving out so many Ditto matches. I feel it should be so easy to just balance out the numbers when you can put the most popular team on defense, so why isn't this how it works? Also, please have multiple Tricolor maps available per Splatfest, at least 2, and preferably both for the entire day. Now for another weird request, maybe let us unlock music albums of Splatoon bands and choose to play them client-side only. I don't know, this is a kind of ridiculous one, but maybe you could put it behind amiibos? I basically just want to relive my childhood. Bring back the old minigames to play between matches, or if not, add Squid Beats back at least, especially so we get names for the music. And can we add 3 maps to the map rotation? Maybe? It's just fitting for their obsession with 3s, it'd just be nice, especially if we do get more maps in Splatoon 2. I think this one is probably never going to happen though. Anyway, those are all my wishes for the future of Splatoon 3. I know I have a lot on there, but that aside, this launch has actually been pretty fantastic. Splatoon 3's special design and new movement options have been a blast, and I hope the game only grows further from here, the first launch that feels complete for a Splatoon game. But it feels like I've missed something. One topic I've failed to mention here are a certain fuzzy campaign mode, maybe? Yeah, I'm sure I'll remember at some point.